What do we think Battlefield 6 is trying to be? Is it the massive, chaotic, all-out warfare spectacle of multiplayer? Is it the endlessly creative sandbox of Portal, where players have the freedom to create their own experience? Or is it the free-to-play, high-stakes fight for survival in REDSEC Battle Royale and Gauntlet? I think the painful truth is that it's trying to be all of them at once. And that decision, I believe currently, is the single greatest threat to the quality of this game. We're seeing the multiplayer experience being somewhat suffocated by other areas of the game. We're seeing Portal completely miss the mark, with next to no elevation of player creations. And REDSEC, I think that launched in an underbaked state to the point where yesterday, the Elite Series tournament, the big marketing push, was indefinitely postponed due to issues with setup and bugs within the mode. In theory, Battlefield 6's wider approach is brilliant because there's something for everybody here. But in reality, we're left with a game that feels compromised. It's now actually feeling like a product that has been stitched together by lots of different teams. It doesn't feel like a single, cohesive product. And the result of that is multiplayer updates that break core functions of the game, a Portal mode that is disappointing in its execution, and a third mode in REDSEC that actually feels like it might have already had its moment in the sun. So in this video, we're going to take a look at this situation, now deep into Season 1, where I think it's a good time to reflect on Battlefield 6 and try and highlight some of the key issues the game now has, and perhaps what the team at Battlefield Studios can do to right the ship and get it going in the right direction again. So if you want to support this video, go ahead and smash that like button, it will help it reach more viewers, and hit that subscribe button for more Battlefield 6 coverage if you haven't already. Despite the tone of this video, Battlefield 6 is still a game that I really enjoy playing, at least on the multiplayer side anyway, and we're pushing hard on the road to 1 million subscribers, and your support could make that possible. Okay, let's start with what's brought on this entire debate really, the latest Battlefield 6 patch that introduced the winter offensive phase of Season 1. This transformed the Empire State map into a snow blizzard as its main flagship piece of content. It also promised to set right some core issues that players have been reporting with the game for quite some time actually, mainly the audio not working properly with key sounds like footsteps and enemy vehicle engine noises not playing properly in the mix, making it much harder to play the game without one of your senses. It also promised to implement some changes to weapon recoil. Many players have complained that the game was essentially fighting their attempt to control it by messing with your sensitivity whilst you were firing. And there were also mentions in the patch notes of preliminary updates to the netcode that would help make those more dense, chaotic moments in gameplay more better represented, and that would lead to less deaths around corners or dying behind cover. Now, for the most part, these three main issues were actually addressed by the patch. Footstep sounds are now much clearer than they were before, engine sounds are bright and clear. Weapon recoil definitely doesn't have that weird sensitivity issue anymore, because where I've built up muscle memory to deal with that, I'm now overshooting my targets a fair bit, so I've got to hone back in that control. And I have had less instances of dying behind cover so far since the update, but they did say these were only preliminary and that more fixes will come in the future, so we'll have to see whether that really comes to fruition. So on the surface, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this update was actually a decent success for the game. But unfortunately, it wasn't, because as it's becoming more and more frequent with Battlefield 6, the more things that are fixed, the more things get broken. Unfortunately, the main headline issue from the update was a broken menu UI, where different rows of tiles began to overlap each other. Sounds stupid even saying this, leaving you unable to click any of them and to get matchmaking to start. PC players also had a nasty bug introduced. They had some intermittent stuttering that would make the game almost completely unplayable, and that, even more unfortunately, coincided with the launch of the Elite Series tournament for Battlefield REDSEC, which in itself had various issues with the platform used for scoring and in-game bugs that resulted from some rather unfavourable moments occurring. The APAC and North American portions of Elite Series didn't even take place yesterday because of these issues. EU did manage to host their matches, but now the entire Elite Series has been postponed, and it will likely take place in the new year when various bugs and issues have been fixed. The update did fix the shy targets in the firing range, but it broke their damage markers and made the hitboxes wider than the targets themselves, leading the firing range to be an unreliable location for testing weapon builds. The update also seemingly nerfed soldier movement by mistake. Nothing was mentioned in the patch notes, but there were lots of examples of movement being slowed down after jumping or sprinting, and even some weapon sway being introduced after certain movements again. There's various UI bugs being shared on Reddit and social media. It's really not been a great patch, to be honest. And this patch sort of feels like the culmination of various smaller issues that have been present right across Battlefield 6 since launch. All of those things kind of bubbling away across different segments of the game that have now all come together and unfortunately created a situation where Battlefield 6 is arguably in its worst state that it's been since the open beta. Ever since that first gameplay opportunity we got in August, the quality of the overall product, I think, has slowly regressed with every single update that we've got, despite each update actually fixing things and introducing new content along the way. It's just that those updates have either uncovered further problems that need to be fixed or have introduced new bugs as well. And I think this all comes down to the game trying to do too much too quickly, and it's trying to please lots of different types of people all at the same time. I'm going to start with multiplayer first, and then I'll come to Portal and REDSEC. Multiplayer is perhaps the mode that has suffered the least and the most at the same time, and I'll explain that now. When it comes to content, multiplayer has been stacked quite healthily since launch. 2 new maps, a redress map that we just got, several new weapons, new vehicles, and a battle pass that has leaned heavily into the setting and biome of Season 1. It's been good when it comes to content, but I do have to say, it does depend on your opinion of whether the content is good or not. I thought the first map, Blackwell Fields, was a bit of a bust, but Eastwood was absolutely fantastic. However, when it comes to bugs and issues, I think multiplayer has actually suffered the most here. We've had several weeks post-launch with lock-on weapons ignoring flares and one-shot killing vehicles across the map. We had recon UAVs becoming launch pads for soldiers that allow players to access areas they shouldn't have been getting to and ruining several maps and game modes, and the issue didn't get fixed for like 3 weeks. Should have been disabled almost instantly. We've had several weapon bloom and recoil bugs that either weren't present in the open beta or players just didn't have enough time to notice them back then, and those have taken several patches to fix. The audio in multiplayer wasn't as bad as it was in REDSEC, but it certainly took its toll, especially when it came to footsteps. The weapon ranking was way off at launch, asking players to spend hours and hours on single weapons in order to unlock basic attachments. That had to be fixed. The challenges and assignment requirements right across the board were completely unreasonable, and they locked essential gameplay gadgets like the spawn beacon away from players from the get-go. They all had to be fixed and are still being adjusted. The list goes on. Despite multiplayer being heavy on content, the entire structure of multiplayer feels like the dev team have been swimming against a strong current since day one, constantly fighting to keep things working properly and righting wrongs update after update. So no matter how much content we've had in Season 1, we've always had this underlying tone of the game not actually being the way it's supposed to be, and players have either had to be patient and deal with that, or they've decided Battlefield 6 isn't for them, and they've stepped away at this point. Then we come to Portal. Oh boy. Perhaps the biggest fumble of all in Battlefield 6, an entire pillar of the game, already somewhat soft-launched because of its presence in Battlefield 2042, and being arguably the best thing about that pretty bad Battlefield game, and somehow the team still managed to mess things up a little bit. Portal in Battlefield 6 is infinitely more powerful, more content-rich, and more player-focused than ever, allowing you to create almost anything you want. There's some incredible experiences already where players have created their own test ranges. They've made new maps, different game modes, mini-games, aim trainers, platforms. There is so much in there, but no one's playing any of it because no one can find it. An issue that persisted across from Battlefield 2042 as well was the presence of seemingly infinite numbers of XP bot farms clogging up the entire server browser in Portal, made either before or after it became apparent that weapon grinding was going to be a pain in the butt in Battlefield 6. Add on to that a menu UI that's clearly been made to mimic streaming services like Netflix and Hulu, rather than focusing on building something that allows players to find what they're looking for, and you've got a recipe for disaster. Now, the other day, a Battlefield Studios dev, Justin Weeb, sat down with PC Gamer and actually admitted that the team right now isn't doing a good enough job of surfacing the player creations that would really show the power and creative flexibility of Portal. He said there's actually been a technical issue that the team has been waiting to fix that will enable them to begin elevating and surfacing experiences to the wider player base in the menus. But he didn't expand on what that issue actually was. To me, it was evident from the very start that Portal wasn't being positioned correctly in the menus. For one, the word Portal isn't even used. The tab is called Community, which is confusing in its own right. And then all of the tiles on that row are just Battlefield official experiences. The exact opposite of what Portal was supposed to be for. That's for community creations, not dev-created ones. Then, if you're brave enough to actually step into the experiences in the server browser, or using the different tabs and filters, you will find some cool creations. But no one's playing them because it takes 20 different clicks to launch something, and when you do, you're often met with empty game modes because everyone else has just tried to do what you've just done, and they were met with an empty server at a different time of the day. All of this power and player agency in Battlefield 6 via Portal is being completely wasted, and the entire pillar of the game is a far cry from what the team marketed before launch. It makes me feel like the feature was launched before it was actually ready. It's supported by one of the worst menu UIs of any video game I've ever played, right up there with 2022's Modern Warfare 2, and core fundamental discoverability features that would have made the feature function at least as advertised before launch are just simply not there. Hindsight is 2020, of course, but did Portal need to launch when Battlefield 6 launched on October 10th? If it wasn't quite ready, which it clearly wasn't when it launched, why was it not held back for a few months and then launched in, I don't know, early 2026, when it was feature complete and sanity checked of clear, obvious issues? I guess we'll never really know the answer to that question, but that sort of feeds into the next part here, Battlefield REDSEC. REDSEC is Battlefield's answer to Warzone. Plain and simple. A free-to-play bolt-on to the main premium product that helps elevate player numbers, welcomes in new players to the franchise with game modes like Battle Royale that they're familiar with, and it increases Battlefield's revenue opportunity by selling weapon and character skin bundles. Now, to me, there's nothing innately wrong with that. I can completely understand why a business like EA would want to do that, pushing Battlefield right up against its top competitor and try and outmuscle it during a time where Call of Duty players have really been clamoring for something fresh and something new, and REDSEC seemingly offered that to them. However, that isn't really what's transpired. The Battle Royale mode, to me, it isn't finished. It's had a fair few issues at launch, and that had to be patched really quickly, by the way. And if truth be told, I think it's still a bit shaky on its feet. It doesn't feel like a polished game mode to me. I don't think it was ready to be launched when it was. And perhaps the greatest example of that is the now postponed Elite Series tournament, something that was set up by EA as this big advertisement of REDSEC and the Battle Royale. Despite ample opportunity to postpone this big marketing beat for the mode, a mode that doesn't really look or feel its best right now, the decision was made even after this update that went out the other day, the Winter Offensive update, which included a lot of issues that needed to be fixed. The decision was made to push forward with the tournament and do it anyway, and it fell at the first hurdle. Not only were there issues with the game mode, there were issues getting teams set up for the event, and that meant that APAC and North America regions, they couldn't play their matches. Only the EU teams got to play their matches when they were supposed to. That's not a good look for what's supposed to be this massive flagship marketing beat for Battlefield 6 and for REDSEC. When it launched just a few weeks after the main Battlefield 6 product did, the splash across the gaming world was nowhere near as big as it was for Battlefield 6 itself, the multiplayer portion. And that's despite REDSEC being free to play compared to Battlefield 6 being a $70 purchase. Player numbers over that launch weekend did spike up, and the weekend after as well, signaling that maybe the mode had some legs, but now over a month later, player numbers have continued to dwindle, despite REDSEC offering a free-to-play route into Battlefield 6 as a product. I don't think REDSEC does enough to innovate in the Battle Royale space either. The missions that you do are really quite boring and uninspired. They're way too easy to do. The mechanic of obtaining a tank feels really easy and quite uninspiring. I think Firestorm did it better in Battlefield 5, where you had these massive bunkers that would create huge noise when opening them up. Here in REDSEC, you just get a keycard and open a truck. Looting feels unpolished as well. Weapons are just strewn across the ground with the rest of the loot. The loot crates take a little bit too long to interact with. The Firestorm itself isn't as grand a spectacle as it was back in Firestorm in Battlefield 5. And the entire BR map, Fort Linden, it just feels a bit lifeless. There's a lot of uninspired POIs in there, and arguably the best parts of the map are outside of those POIs. The vineyard at the very north of the map, that's a really cool end zone, but barely any matches end up there, so you don't see it very often. And I also just want to mention the name of this, REDSEC. It's a terrible name. It's literally awful. It means nothing to me. I don't think it's a clear and obvious name that will make it easy for new players or potential players to know what the product actually is. And gotta be honest, Battlefield Royale was right there. The most obvious, easy to relate name you could possibly imagine. And for some reason, the name REDSEC was chosen. REDSEC is actually short for Redacted Sector. But again, what does that even mean? Does that signify a free-to-play Battle Royale to you? It certainly doesn't to me. So to sort of sum everything up here, I think Battlefield 6 is trying to do way too much at once. You've got 3 core pillars of the game, multiplayer, Portal, and REDSEC, and they're all fighting for attention under one umbrella at the same time. The direct result of that is twofold: cannibalization of each individual pillar, and a general lack of quality within each pillar, because resources are being spread across all 3 at once. Now, I think Portal has probably suffered the most, being completely hamstrung by a UI that does absolutely nothing for it, and it not being properly handled at a high level by leaders who must have seen these issues coming a mile off. Then REDSEC shuffles into the picture with a ropey launch, a less than compelling product, and next to no marketing at all, until now with the Elite Series, when arguably it needed it the least. And then we have the classic multiplayer, the traditional Battlefield experience. Whatever you think of the focus of it, being more infantry-centric than past titles, whatever you think of that, this is the core experience that Battlefield and wider gaming fans know Battlefield for, the multiplayer. And even that is suffering right now with countless bugs and issues. It's a situation that is letting down every single element of this game, and it's tarnishing the goodwill that was earned by the team through the open beta and towards launch. Now, I know it doesn't take much to upset gamers these days, but there have been worse launches of video games. Even within the Battlefield franchise, there have been way worse launches than this one. But that doesn't excuse the situation. EA, DICE, Battlefield Studios, Ripple, whatever you want to call them, they should be more capable of handling this product better than they are right now. We've supposedly got several full development studios working on this product, and with that sort of firepower behind it, I was really expecting things to be better than what we're currently seeing. So where does this leave Battlefield 6 then? The ambition to deliver 3 distinct experiences, multiplayer, Portal, and REDSEC, has created this sort of monster that's kind of consuming all the game's own resources and focus. There are issues everywhere. Multiplayer, despite plenty of content, feels like it's suffering from more bugs every update. Portal may as well not exist because no one can find and play the creations being made. And REDSEC, in an attempt to carve out a space in the BR market, I think launched too early and is now struggling to solidify a position at all. Each pillar of Battlefield 6, when you zoom out, could be fantastic. But right now, each of them is essentially competing against one another, so you've got 3 compromised pillars. I think the developers need to take a serious look at what they want from Battlefield 6 and start to actually drive towards that goal. Me as a player, I can't actually see what that goal is right now. I don't know what Battlefield 6 is really supposed to be, and that's a pretty big problem. Now, let me know what you think. Do you think the current development structure is sustainable for Battlefield 6 with all these different things working together, or I don't know, are you willing to wait for the quality to catch up to the quantity of content that we've got here? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. Thanks all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.